You what?
I said I had to get up front because I didn't want nobody in my video.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? I am Sentinel Johnson of the 3rd Infantry Regiment, United States Army, Guard of Honor, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. The ceremony that you are about to witness is the changing of the guard. In keeping with the dignity of this ceremony, it is requested that everyone remain silent and standing. Thank you. Guards, halt. Forward, march. Guards, halt. Port, arms. Ready, face. Present, arms. Port, arms. Ready, face. Pass on your orders.
Halt and orders. Remain as directed.
Orders. Acknowledged.
Ready, face. Present, arms. Right shoulder, arms. Post. Right face. Forward, march. Guard, halt. Follow.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? That's the ceremony that you are about to witness is an Army Wreath Flame ceremony, to be conducted by U.S. Army Logistics NCO Academy. It is requested that everyone remain silent and standing during this ceremony. All military personnel in uniform will render the hand salute. And it is appropriate for all others to place their right hand over their heart upon command of present arms. Thank you.
Present arms. Order. Oh. Ready, set.
It's an induction ceremony for our regiment, and it's so important. How many of you have never done an INSU induction ceremony? You all definitely, because sometimes we get too cool for school. I'll tell you, it's such an important thing that we sit and stop and recognize our non-commissioned officers because there are things, and those are pivotal times along our career path, and it takes you all to be part of that and remember these things. There are some that are done elaborately and some not so elaborately, but we stop and recognize non-commissioned officers as the backbone, and we say, hey, we as a corps are going to go out and make sure we enforce standards, because you are the ones that make it happen. Sergeant Major, I'm a way up the boat. I care about hands and pockets and lines and dirt, but doggone it, you make sure somebody doesn't do it. Like we said about grass, it grows by inch and dies by your foot. You know, so we got to make sure that those young leaders out there, every soldier gets a sergeant. You just got to make sure they have a good one and provide you with the knowledge that you need going forward. And you have to make sure that you go out there, get diversity in your career. Okay, diversity in assignments. Don't ever. Anybody ever read the book? My chat.
But yeah, if you guys have any questions about anything that we do here about the history or our training, feel free to ask me. You can either wait to the end of the brief or just stop me in the middle of my brief. I definitely don't mind. But it's just going to be a short brief. I'm not going to take up too much of your time, and I'm also not going to go into training too much because there's so much information about the training. We'll be here all day long if I start getting into the training. But if you have questions about it, feel free to ask me, okay? So I'm gonna start with what an unknown soldier is. I'm pretty sure most of you guys are, familiar with an unknown soldier. This is a soldier that, was not or could not be identified. And so the concept of this monument became after World War I. And so after World War I, there were other countries that had a monument dedicated to their unknown soldier, such as France. And we didn't have one just quite yet. And so Americans began to question why we don't have a monument dedicated to the unknown soldiers from the war. And so in 1921, Congress approved to have a monument built in honor of the unknown soldier. And so after that, there had to be a selection process for that unknown soldier. And so there were thousands of unknown soldiers after the war. And so what they did, they exhumed one soldier from 4 cemeteries in France. So France, after the war, France gave America 4 pieces of land to bury the fallen soldiers from the war. And so they chose one random unknown soldier from each one of those cemeteries. And they placed them in front of a highly decorated soldier of the war at the time. It was Sergeant Edward F. Younger. And so they placed them all in identical caskets, so he couldn't tell, who they were, what cemetery they came from. And he circled the caskets 3 times, and then he placed a spray of white roses in the 3rd casket from his left. I'm gonna give them like a couple minutes because they're gonna come through and they're gonna get out the door, okay?
Got an audience.
Yeah. So this PLC Miller right here, he's one of our newest tomb guards to pass training. There's one other that has passed right after him, but he's gonna be badge number 667, right? Yep. Yeah, 667. So we're up to 668 now. I'll get a little bit into that later on, but this is Miller. He's on his way out the door now. Have a good one.
Thank you, sir.
Did he come straight from training to here?
Yep.
So he got assigned straight to the old guard now?
Yep. So a lot of us are like that. Like I came straight from basic training as well, and so a lot of us will go through basic training, and they'll kind of ask certain questions like, "Oh, how tall are you? If you're this tall, come over here. Your GT score this, stay over here." Of course, none of us had any Article 15 yet. We're still in basic training. I mean, most of us, but and then they would ask, certain questions, certain qualifications, and if you met those qualifications, they were like, all right, you 10, come with me, do a brief, tell us about the old guard. Some people signed a piece of paper with more information, or they wanted to come down here, and so a lot of us got assigned here at basic training. PFC Miller, he was assigned here. He came here as soon as he got to the old guard. I spent about a year on the caskets team in the cemetery. Before I volunteered to come down here. So my time is up here, so Tuesday is my last day here, and Wednesday is my last walk.
No.
Yeah, so I'll be done with here. But I re-enlisted, so I'm just PCS into Italy, so next assignment. So that'll be pretty fun.
For those who don't know, Sergeant Garcia and I have watched each other grow a little bit over the last 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
This weekend marks the anniversary, Garcia, if you didn't know, of 2 years of doing this. So I believe the 15th, 2 years ago, was the first wreath laying ceremony.
April 26th, 2 years ago was my first day down here. So you got here like, 2 weeks before I did. And then we've been working with each other ever since. So every time I see him, I kind of, it's a warm, familiar face that I see all the time. So
Yes.
But continue. So where was I? Oh, after the selection process that took place in France, and so after that unknown soldier was selected, that unknown soldier was brought back here to Washington D.C. The other 3 were reinterred in their respective cemeteries back in France. And so after that selection process took place and the unknown soldier was brought back here, that soldier laid in rest in the rotunda for 24 hours. Not sure if you guys have been able to visit the Capitol, but it's the center of our Capitol there. And so that's where that soldier laid in rest for about 24 hours. And so people came and visited, they paid their respects, but eventually they had to shut it all down so they can prepare for the ceremony they were going to have for that unknown soldier. And so they had a full honor ceremony where they had the caisson. He rode on caisson from the Capitol to Arlington National Cemetery, where he had his funeral services in the amphitheater right behind the tomb here. And so after the funeral services, or during the funeral services, the unknown soldier obviously had no next of kin. And so the president stood in place as the next of kin because he felt it was his responsibility to stand in place as the next of kin, because it was the president at the time who sent that soldier off to war. And so the president felt it was his responsibility to welcome that soldier back home. And so he stood in place as the next of kin, received the folded flag, and he presented that unknown soldier with the Medal of Honor. And so after that ceremony took place in the amphitheater, that soldier was interred here in Arlington National Cemetery at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Now, the monument that you see out there today wasn't the monument that was out there in the beginning. The monument that was out there first was just a flat marble slab. It was about 3-4 feet high, as you can see, on the photo behind. Staffs aren't there. So that was the original design there. And so a little bit about that tomb. It wasn't until about 10 years later, in 1931, whenever they made this final design, the one that you see out there today. And so there was a competition for the final design. And so a sculptor and an architect, Lorimer Rich and Thomas Hudson Jones, won that competition, and their design was selected to be put here at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And so this is actually the front of the tomb. Where you guys have the ceremony and where you guys usually wash and change the guard is actually the backside of the tomb. Now, the reason why that is they designed it to be viewed from the center landing down here, to be viewed up as you see the three figures: peace, valor, and victory. They didn't anticipate having 3 more wars and 3 more unknown soldiers, and so they placed them behind the tomb, and that's where everybody watches, the changing of the guard. So that's a little bit of, about the tomb. The guard, there was no guard here at first. Obviously, they didn't think one was needed. And so from 1921 until about 1925, this monument was left unguarded. And people would come here and they would, disgrace this monument in several different ways. They would, have picnics on it, camp on it. They would, pose as workers for Arlington National Cemetery and charge people to take pictures with the monument. Some people would even go as far as chip pieces of marble off of it to keep for themselves. And so obviously, civilians were not happy with that. So a civilian guide posted himself during the hours of the cemetery to guard the monument. Just kind of, walk around, make sure nobody was disrespecting the monument. But after the cemetery closed, it still continued. And so in 1926, the Secretary of War ordered someone to be here, but it was just a Arlington National Cemetery worker. And he, again, only worked during the hours of the cemetery. It wasn't until about 1937 whenever they placed the first 24-hour guard, and that was the 3rd Cavalry Regiment. And then in 1948, about 11 years after that, the old guard, the 3rd Infantry Regiment, took over the guard monument, and we've been guarding it ever since. So it's been guarded since 1937. For about 81 years, this monument's been guarded 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. For that reason, to protect this monument from any disrespect or disgrace or anything like that. Now going into the unknown soldiers that are buried behind the tomb, and so you have the Korean War and World War II. Now these two had a double interment. And the reason why that is because after World War II in 1945, Congress gave the United States military about 5 years to identify as many soldiers as they could from the war. And so, but in 1950, when it was time to make a final selection process, we were in the Korean War. And so they were like, okay, let's put this thing on hold until this Korean thing blows over. But it ended up being a lot bigger than that. And so it wasn't until after the Korean War in 1953 they gave an additional 5 more years to identify as many soldiers as they could from the Korean War, and then they would do a double internment for both unknown soldiers from both wars. And so in 1958 they had the double internment. And it's just pretty much the same thing as in World War I. They had highly decorated soldiers and officers make the final selection. The president and vice president stood in place as the next of kin, received the flag, presented the Medal of Honor. And they also have the memorial services here in the amphitheater, and then they were interred here in Arlington National Cemetery. This room is a little bit more full than usual, so I usually kind of go around. You guys can see the pictures, but after I get the brief, you guys can be more than welcome to view the pictures on the wall there. That's the pictures of the double interment on that one. And so that brings me to the center crypt that's back out here. And so the center crypt has a little bit of a unique story. So, and that information is on that back wall there. The center crypt is unique because that soldier is no longer interred here in Arlington National Cemetery. That soldier was actually identified as First Lieutenant Michael J. Blassie of the Air Force. And so how that happened was that after the Vietnam conflict, we had a lot of ways to identify soldiers. And so the candidates were very, very limited. There were 3 at first, but then through investigation and time, two of them were identified. One is a deserter and the other is a Viet Cong. So there was only one. And his story was even kind of a little fishy because they found his remains at his crash site in Vietnam. And so his ID card was actually with his remains whenever they found him. But upon transportation from Vietnam back to the United States, those two got separated. And they had no way to identify this soldier. And so he became the only candidate to be interred here as a Vietnam unknown soldier. And so that soldier was interred here in 1984, but his sister, he had a sister in the Air Force as well, and she had beliefs that this soldier was her brother. She would, you know, she couldn't just let it go that her brother hasn't, you know, he just disappeared, he just didn't want to come home. So, you know, she investigated it, and she asked people who were investigating the crash sites in Vietnam. She questioned, you know, people at his unit, people that he served with, and through all those investigations, she provided enough information and paperwork to present to Congress to have this unknown soldier exhumed and DNA tested. You know, Congress was, you know, a little resistant to allow that to happen because they found it hard to believe that one woman could possibly know who this unknown soldier was when our entire United States military couldn't identify him. And so it took about 14 years. So in 1998, they finally approved her request, disinterred him, had him DNA tested, and it came back positive as her brother, First Lieutenant Michael J. Blassie. And so per request of her and her family, he was returned home to St. Louis, Missouri, where he was finally laid to rest in July of 1998. And so that Senate crib now remains empty because he was the only candidate. And by 1998, we had many ways to identify soldiers. And so there was never going to be another unknown soldier after that. So a year after, they placed an inscription on the Senate crib. You probably won't be able to see it from out there, but it says, honoring and keeping faith with America's missing servicemen. And it dates 1958 to 1975, the time during the Vietnam conflict. And so that's just to remember all those soldiers who have not come home from that war, even to this day. And so, that kind of concludes a history brief of the unknown soldiers, how they got here, how they were interred, the tomb itself. A little bit about us as guards. We guard this monument every single day, through any type of weather, because these soldiers out here, they deserve that. These three soldiers here, not just these three, but we have 4,725 unknown soldiers buried in Arlington National Cemetery alone. Those soldiers, they not only gave their lives, but they also gave their identities. They don't owe us or this country anything at all. It's us who owe them absolutely everything. And so all the work that we put into our uniforms, the hours we spend shining our shoes, studying our knowledge, anything that we do perfecting our performance outside, we do it for those unknown soldiers, for the families that come here, to pay their respects, because we are the voice of the millions of families, who wish they could go out there and honor these unknown soldiers. So we do it to the best of our ability, for the unknown soldiers and their families. Down here we have a saying, and that saying is, soldiers only die when they're forgotten, tomb guards never forget. And so we never allow ourselves to forget, and we never allow anybody that comes in contact with us to forget what these unknown soldiers did and what they sacrificed. And we do that by learning about them, by learning the history, the knowledge, the brief that I just gave you guys. We brief the public, anybody we come in contact with here, and even outside of here, because that's one way we keep these soldiers alive, is to tell their story. You guys will go back to where you're from, and you guys will hopefully continue to tell their story. That's our way of keeping these soldiers alive. That's how we can honor them, off the plaza. It's our second most important part of our job, next to being out there guarding the unknowns, is briefing the public and telling their story. So that's a little bit about why we do what we do as guards here. Like I said, I won't go into trading too much because I'll be here, and you guys will be here with me until 07. I go into training. So, but if you guys have questions about training or anything about I just went over, feel free to ask me. I love answering questions. It's my third favorite part of the job. No questions?
Well, how long do you have to train up before you can actually walk?
So before you actually walk, it varies on the guard. So you can get out the door. We call it getting out the door within a month, or it can take 3 or 4 months, depending on how well you learn your knowledge, how well you get your outside performance, and how good your uniforms look. And so it just varies guard to guard. I was out within about a month after moving down here. So
I was about to say, based off that question, I believe Staff Sergeant Calderon told me that you were done with training in about a month.
No, not doing training. I did it in about 4.5, 5 months. I set the record for the fastest time passing training.
Wow.
And so it takes about average about 9 months, 9 to 12 months to pass training. I did it in about 5. So I don't think I slept during training, so at least I don't remember. But,
Why don't you wear ranks?
Not to outrank the,
so yes, exactly. So we don't outrank the unknowns because we don't know the rank of the unknown soldier out there. So we don't wear rank or we don't wear name tags either. We wear any ribbons or awards or schools that we have because all of them are Medal of Honor recipients.
Okay.
And anything that we wear would never outrank them.
Yeah.
Great question.
How many badges?
I was wondering.
I don't know the exact number. I try to avoid that. It's more than we want. You know, it's you know, one badge revoked is way more than what we need. Yeah, I've never actually gone through and counted how many revoked badges there are.
How does that work, like after you get done with your tour here and you go to your unit, can it get revoked after that? Or?
So the badge can be revoked at any time because this badge is a permanent badge awarded, and so you wear it on your uniform, you know, through your entire military career, and it even follows you throughout your civilian career. And the reason why that is because we represent this monument. We represent our nation's most sacred shrine. So we have to carry ourselves to a higher standard because of what we represent. And so as long as we wear that badge, or if we just wear this, you know, polo here, or anything that we have that has that, you know, we have to conduct ourselves in a manner that will always bring honor to this monument. And if the regiment hears about anything that you've done, a DUI, you know, Article 15 throughout your military career, or anything that you've done to bring any type of dishonor to this monument, then your orders will be put in to have your badge revoked. And then your badge number, or where your name was, will all be marked off, replaced with a revoked plaque, and we keep record of everything that we do down here. And so they'll go through all the log books that we have and just strike out your name and anything that you've ever done down here. So you will not be associated with this monument ever again.
Oh my goodness.
So it's pretty serious. So
Very.
the hard work you put into getting your name on that board, I find it hard to believe people would, you know, do things like that. Yeah, exactly.
Good in the operation.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we have, that's our badge. I keep pointing away, I haven't kind of told you about it yet, but that's our badge wall there. Ever since the badge was first awarded in 1958, all the way until our current badge, number 668. I don't think they've been out on there quite yet. PFC Miller and Specialist Seamen have passed training in the past few weeks, so they'll have their badge ceremony about the end of this month, and then their names will be added to that wall there. And so it's only been that 668 in about 61 years. So that's about 10 badges awarded per year. It's
What are the two smaller?
so the two smaller ones, these here were the ones that came forth and said that they guarded this monument before the badge was actually awarded. And so the badge wasn't a permanent badge, but there were guards that guarded this monument. And so these guys came forward. They say, "I guarded this." They provided the paperwork, and if it, you know, matched up and we could prove it, then we would add their name to that plaque there. That was prior to 1958. The one over here with the badge on it on the sides, those were badges that were awarded to soldiers that didn't get it permanently. So it was only given to NCOs, higher enlisted, whenever they came down, and they weren't enlisted. They weren't given permanently to lower enlisted soldiers. So when lower enlisted soldiers would serve here and they would leave after 1958, the badge would stay with the platoon. And so after the badge became a permanent badge for anybody who served down here, they were retroactively awarded a permanent badge. And so they were added. They couldn't be added to the wall there, but they were added to that plaque back there. There wasn't very many. It was just, you know, that little plaque that we have there. But those are the ones who should have been there, had their badges awarded permanently. And then, like I said, that's our permanent badge one. From Master Sergeant Wayne McDaniel to, I think, Captain Farrar now. I think he's the last one on there. He's our first or not first, but he's our officer to earn the badge in like the past 20 years. We haven't had an officer down here in about 20 years, but we just recently got one about a year ago. He just earned his badge recently. So.
He went through training. Right. I'll leave that alone.
Next question.
Oh my God.
You can take that off.
Cool.
Support MOSs, I'm not sure exactly the number. And I can't remember exactly the year whenever they started allowing support MOSs to come down here. But there have been several females, MPs.
Do y'all all, regardless MOS, I saw that they were wearing the blue disc.
No, that's just because most of us working today are infantry. Yeah, there's only one who is an infantry.
Okay, I didn't know if that was just y'all did that because that's the uniform you wear, or they were actually infantry.
Yeah, so I think all of us working today are infantry, except for Sergeant Banda. He's actually a cook. He's currently going through
Yeah.
training. He's doing pretty well. Yeah, he's a cook. But I think I think all of us working down today are infantry. But we have a big.
There's a 91 Bravo staff sergeant that works here as well. Mechanic.
Yep, Staff Sergeant Hudson. He's amazing tomb guard. Some of the most amazing tomb guards are like mechanics or medics, cooks, drivers.
Truck drivers.
Staff Sergeant Cameron, you know.
I told them we have one Rangers that just come from here somewhere.
Who was it?
He's with us now, or
Is he?
was. It's been a while, but he did the whole drill and ceremony for us when y'all came down last year.
Really? Man, I can't remember. We have so many people like leaving here. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to put them all together. There's so many names that I've seen come and go.
So you were going through OSET, and they're like, hey, we got this going on, you wanna be a part of it, or?
So, I tell people we volunteer. You know, it just sounds better. You know, we volunteer. We want to be down here. Truth is, 90% of us don't want to be down here. You know,
That's what
nobody,
recruiting is too, so.
and nobody wants to be down here. So whenever I, they pulled me in that room, I heard about it. I was like, oh man, that sounds cool. But I'm infantry. I want to go like deploy and go shoot some guns and do some cool stuff. You know, what am I gonna do there? Dress up and look all pretty? You know, like that's, you know. And I was like, nah, it's not for me. But I signed that paper, and I guess that paper meant something more than just more information. Because about 10 weeks later, they were like, hey, you're going to the old guard.
Those were orders.
Yeah. And so yeah, about 10 weeks later, got my orders to come to the old guard. Got here, I said, served on the Cascas team, and then got told I was coming down here. Now I'm very happy about it. For the most part, I was probably more intimidated more than anything. You know, just coming out, seeing the performance and what they do out here, their uniforms, I was like, there's no way. I did not have what it takes to do that. And so when I got down here, I'm not, a type of soldier to just quit anything on purpose. Like a lot of people come down because they're told they'll fail something on purpose or not try as hard. But I gave it 100%, and I met the qualifications. So.
Are y'all's weapons functional?
And they're fully functional, but they're not.
Yeah. What does he carry? What does the NCO carry? It wasn't a 1911.
M9.
That's been retired. It's right here.
It's a 6 or M17.
Yeah, it's M17. Those aren't new. We just recently got those back October. The M9, we retired those, and those are the only two that have ever been made. They have names Silence and Respect. Those are the ones that we used up until October. And then on October, we got the new M17s. And so those are a little bit, people have their.
It was pretty sharp looking. I saw it.
So,
Sharp on the pistol.
everybody had a little bit of say in how they wanted the design to go. Because they came down, SIG came down, and they kind of asked us our opinion on, if we designed you a pistol, what would you want on it? And so, there were a few people who kind of threw out ideas, and they added it to the pistol. And
Teddy Roosevelt riding a moose through a river or something.
so,
Jason Huffman.
who was that?
Jason Huffman.
Huffman?
H-U-F-F-M-A-N. Huffman. I think he did the casket stuff
Casket
more
stuff.
than anything. And I don't know if he did. He was with
The Ozark?
Yeah.
First he did.
I was surprised they used an old M1 Grant, but then they used the most modern pistol.
Yeah.
Thank you.
out there is all the time. Maxwell has a Medal of Honor recipient one. Graham has some wings on there. I think those are actual wings. I don't know from where, but he has that. Sorry, man, that looks like he has something against one up there. So it's just, you know, our choice. Trying to think if I missed anything. Oh, our weapons rack here, right behind you there. So these are the weapons the actual weapons that we use out there. The darker rack has our night training rifles. So those are the ones that we use at night to train with. Newer guys, they come down, they train with their rifles. They're a lot more beat up than our day rifles. Our day rifles are, we take care of them a lot more. They look real nice and pretty, nice and shiny. We don't train with those, we just strictly use those when we're going out the door. But these are the exact same ones, they're just, like I said, a little bit more beat up, and we'll train with these material. Yeah, but you feel free if you want to pick it up, you know, pass it around. It's about 9.5 pounds. That's the actual rifle that we'll take out there, the one we're actually carrying, doing the weapon inspection with and everything. So, bayonet's not as sharp, it's not as nice and shiny. But we have to have a sharp bayonet because we don't have loaded rounds in the weapon, so I'm gonna have some type of protection out there.